Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Modern Florida Wedding Podcast. I'm here with my guest Shannon. Tarrant, is it Tarrant or Tarrant?
It's actually Tarrant, like parent
Tarrant.
with a T.
Okay. All right. Parent like with a T. Okay. Perfect. She is the founder of the Wedding Venue Map. It is a website located on the internet, but website which helps couples find wedding venues located in Florida mostly, correct? Or do you have
Yeah.
any?
No, we're actually mostly only in Central Florida. A few of the other
Okay.
areas have found us, but mostly just Central.
Awesome. Yeah. So they also have additional planning tools and a blog on their website, but I'll let Shannon kind of get a little bit more into that. I just wanted to introduce her so you guys can get a little taste of what's to come. But why don't you go ahead and get it started and tell us a little bit about yourself? What got you started in the wedding industry and, how you stumbled into this industry and how it all started.
Yeah, so I'm excited to be here and share a little bit of my story and some tips for your listeners. I started my career in offsite catering. So the fun part about being a caterer is you get to kind of jump in and out of all the different venues within the market, and so getting to kind of manipulate space and figure out what you're going to put where and how you're going to lay it all out. And then I went from catering to working at a venue. I worked at a great family owned resort here in Central Florida. But after 10 years between the two, I needed a break from weddings. We were a high volume venue and we were doing over 100 weddings a year. And so I needed a
Wow.
break. I needed a break from that every weekend lifestyle, working every single weekend, all weekend long. And found that there was a great opportunity for couples who were searching for a venue. A few of the national directories had shifted, and rather than listing every venue in the market, they were only listing those who chose to pay. And so for couples looking to find a venue, it was really limiting because there were so many great ones out there that weren't listed. So we decided to build an online venue search engine for couples being able to search to find the perfect venue.
That's awesome. I feel like that's something that can be so helpful for people who kind of have uh, sort of a type of location in mind, but aren't really sure what's available. So I think that could be super helpful for people who just have, or even people who have nowhere, like have no idea how to start. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest challenge when it comes to searching for a venue is that you either have like a guest count or maybe the style of venue, but other than that, you don't have a ton of direction. So when the list is really limited and doesn't really show you what all the choices are, it makes it even harder because then you're digging and doing word of mouth and trying to Google. And so we just decided to build a platform where they'd be able to not only find every venue in our market, but also be able to sort and refine the list by about 45 different criteria.
oh, can you list some of the criteria just really quickly off the top of your head?
Yeah, so I always joke and say, so if you have 200 guests and you're looking for a barn and you want an outdoor ceremony with an indoor reception where you can bring in your own catering, but it's pet friendly so your dog can come, you could actually sort by all of those criteria. So
Wow,
yeah, you can
that's
get really
awesome.
specific if you have a vision that you want an outdoor ceremony but indoor reception, or you want to be outdoor but you want it to be covered. You can really kind of narrow down or at least see what some of those criteria you might want to consider.
Hmm. That's really cool. That sounds like a lot of weddings I've attended in the
Yes.
past, actually. So you hit the nail on the
Uh-huh.
head right there.
Yep.
So, okay, let's say I'm a bride and I'm looking for a venue and
Hmm.
I go on your website and I'm, searching through what is something that um what is something I should look for like once I've made my choice? What is something that I should, what's the next step?
Yeah, I think the hardest part when you're just searching online is photos are great, but going to actually see something in person. So when you start to narrow down that venue list, it's making sure that if you even have any hesitation or like, ooh, this one could be good, but maybe I don't love those photos, go see it in person because there's a lot of times that photos either don't do it justice. I worked at this gorgeous golf resort, and while the photos were beautiful, when you went, you were like, holy Lord, like the vastness of 1,800 acres. And, you can't showcase that always when it comes to images. So I think that's an important part, to remember that what you see online is great. I also highly suggest that you try to find either a photographer or someone who's blogged an entire wedding there start to finish, because the pictures you're seeing online are always going to be a highlight reel. It's always
Mm-hmm.
going to be they're going to go through all those weddings and events they've done and choose their best of the best images, which is great. Of course, that's
Mm-hmm.
good marketing, is they're showing you their best, but maybe they don't have a great ready space available, so you don't see any pictures of people getting ready, or
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of pictures of the spaces but not really portraits, which might mean that venue is a little bit limited. So
Mm-hmm.
either look through their website, their own blog, or find a photographer that might have also blogged any wedding from that venue, so you can maybe
Mm-hmm.
see some of the other spaces.
Right. So let's say I find a venue, and then if I'm looking for a photographer, uh I know I could possibly go on Instagram and do like by location.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could find a photographer that way, I'm assuming.
Yep, you can work backwards, or you can even sometimes Google image search. And a lot
Mm.
of times look on Google Images to see, maybe there's something with a photographer logo on it, or you can see underneath it whose website it's on.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time, if that Google image is pulling up, it's that photographer probably has a
Mm-hmm.
gallery from that
Right.
wedding rather than just the one highlight image.
Right. That's true.
Yeah,
And
Instagram's
then
great. It's just a little harder to be able to see like the whole wedding.
right, right. But that could be a point of contact for contacting the photographer if they don't have that full gallery on their
Yeah,
website. So
absolutely.
awesome. So speaking of blogs, what kind of stuff do you post on your blog? Because I noticed you had a blog page on your website.
Yeah, we really try to take the time to listen to the couples getting married and try to learn the kinds of information they're looking for. So we do a survey every single year that literally is our, engaged couple survey. And
Hmm.
a piece of that is from the content standpoint. So we always feature proposal stories because I love learning about people's proposal stories and like where that kind of how they met and how and what's the planning process looking like. So we feature proposal stories, real weddings. We love showcasing what in the industry term we would call a styled shoot, which is like just straight up inspiration. So
Hmm.
being able to give couples ideas and inspiration and also helpful tips and informational type things. So we've written blog posts on how to save money in certain categories, or where to start on, where to start your planning, when it comes to specific things. We're working on a blog post right now called Wedding Day Disasters, and have asked a bunch of our vendors to kind of share something they actually experienced and how it could have been prevented. And so
Hmm.
just being able to go through, one of our bridal salon partners, we worked with them to do what to make sure you pack for wedding day, the things you often forget. So it's just, that constant flow of information, being able to not only inspire, but also educate and share that helpful knowledge that we have as experienced wedding professionals that maybe the couples don't know.
Awesome. Yeah, I could definitely contribute to the wedding day disasters
Yeah,
blog.
seriously. We've all seen them, and I think that like so much of it is preventable.
Yeah, a lot of it is
So,
just like poor planning on someone's
yes.
part, or, I mean, I know it can be really hard because there's a lot of things to remember, but
Yep.
sometimes it's like, really, you forgot that, like that one, or you forgot the rings, like what? How do you
Yeah.
forget the rings, or how do you forget this crucial part? So,
I was helping friends on a wedding, and and I had like checked every box and gone through everything and every reminder I could think of. And we get there and I was like, marriage license. And the best man looked at me and was like, oh God. And I'm like, it's at the hotel. He's like, it's at the hotel. So while the ceremony was going on, I drove to the hotel. It was like insanity, but yep,
yeah.
one of those
Yeah, it
things,
takes a village, it really does. So,
literally, for sure.
All right. So also I saw that you have some planning tools. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Like what kind of planning tools you have featured on your website?
Yeah, I think that, when people are searching for a venue, a lot of times they're also, especially when it's bride specific, they're also in that stage where they're maybe starting to look for a wedding dress. So we try to feature all of Central Florida in our market, all of the local bridal salons, so they can kind of see where all the options are in one place. And then outside of that, we really like to push, recommend, suggest couples go to whatever in-person events they could find. So whether that's a
Mm-hmm.
local wedding show, where they have that ability to get that inspiration, the knowledge, meet a bunch of vendors all in one shot, or sometimes the venues will host an open house, or, just some of the different events. I mean, sometimes we do like cute date night ideas that like the zoo did a, zoo and brews or something like
Oh,
that. Just different things for you to be able to enjoy the process a little bit better of planning a wedding rather than it all just being online, just trying to take it in person. So those are some
mm-hmm.
of the different tools. Outside of that, everything else you can find over in the blog.
That's cool. Yeah, I feel like sometimes it could be so daunting. So having just a little bit of help, even if it is like, you know, somebody giving you a list,
Yeah.
or a schedule, like that can be like what to plan, how to start planning, what's the first thing you want to do, what's the second thing, Some of those
Yeah.
things can be some of those things can be super helpful. So,
And I think sometimes too that, when you're planning a wedding, there's so much information online, it gets overwhelming and it's all really conflicting and it's
oh
not
yeah.
location specific.
Oh
So when
no.
you can find things, even from Tampa to Orlando to Daytona to Jacksonville, like it's different in every mark. I mean, I Orlando and Tampa overlaps pretty well. It's pretty similar
Mhm.
in terms of price points and things, but Orlando to
Right.
Miami is like you left the country. Like it's
Right.
nowhere close to the same. So I think when you can find local resources that will help, but also we try really hard to be super honest because I think when I was working with couples in catering and at the venue that it's just somebody's got to real talk them about what the things cost. And
Right.
we're at wedding shows and that we're talking about budget and they're giving me criteria for venue and how many guests. And I look at them and I'm like, you don't have enough money. Like
Mm-mm.
it's getting married is not a cheap endeavor. Even if you cut a million different ways, it's, you're still going to spend a decent amount of money. And
Right.
so we just try to make sure that the resources and the way we work with couples and how we answer things in DMs and emails and all of that stuff is just really straight, like real talk.
Right. Yeah. And speaking about that, can you give me a few like red flags to look out for when, you're trying to plan a wedding and you're speaking to maybe like your wedding venue point of contact or even like your bridal salon? Like what is something where, you know, they say something and you're like, "Oh, this is probably bad?"
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing when you're planning weddings is to trust your gut. And
Hmm.
when, as you're in that planning process, and maybe it's before you've booked them or selected to use them, I think that it's to remember that unfortunately this is real talk for the couples. Hopefully the venues aren't listening to me, but the I think that the level of service and response time is something you really need to pay attention to,
Right.
because if you're sending an email and or filling out a form online, I mean, be realistic. If you send that shit in on a Friday or a Saturday, we're busy doing weddings. But if you're sending that in on a Tuesday or Wednesday and it's taking 4 or 5, 6 days to get a response and you haven't even booked there yet, you just want to, it kind of sets the tone for what that service level will be. So I'd say
Hmm.
that's probably the biggest flag to look at, because sometimes in the wedding and event industry, a lot of the businesses, maybe they're solopreneurs and they're only one person, they don't have a team, which is okay, but it's important to note what's that response time look like, and what, if you're like, God, I feel like they're taking so long to get me a contract or get me a, like, you really got to trust your gut.
Right. That's a good point. And then on that note, what is something you should ask, like once you start talking to a wedding venue, for example, what is a few things you should ask just to get a feel for, maybe how their services are, or, what
Yeah.
the day of will look like.
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges is comparing venues apples to apples because you might find this, beautiful barn style venue and it's literally just the barn tables and chairs and that's all they do and they're hands off and you show up and that's it and they don't have anywhere to get ready and they don't have, any of those things versus where I worked where we were a hotel. So we were food, beverage, venue, rentals, linens, like all of that was included. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think one of the great questions to ask is what's not included in your package that I'm going to go have to source myself. Like I'm going
Gotcha.
to have to
Okay.
go find and hire what's built in or what's not there is one of the like most common forgotten questions.
Mm-hmm. That's super smart. Yeah. Um, I definitely wanted to talk to you as well about some of the venues. Like I know you have a lot of venues listed on your site. So have you
Yeah,
been to each one of them?
I would say that I have toured probably 80% of them.
Okay.
I've
And do
either
you
toured
know,
them or been to a networking event or attended a wedding or worked there when I was in
hmm
catering.
and do you have the number of all of the venues off the top of your head right now?
I think we have like just under 500 in Central Florida. We have about
Wow.
5 to 10 new ones coming. And what we would consider Central Florida, and I mean, on the website, a few people in Tampa found us in St. Augustine and whatever, but the heart of Central Florida is really kind of that, Seminole County down to like just south of Disney, east over to UCF, and west over to like Groveland. So it's a pretty
Hmm.
big square mileage area, but yeah, no, there's a ton of them, but I have been to almost all of them.
That's so cool. And then do you have any favorites?
Oh, that's a great question that I'll never put verbally out of my mouth. But I do think that like I think one of the things that I'm seeing that the couples are really favoriting is the venues that are offering all-inclusive packages. Is that, wedding planning has gotten really stressful. And so out of our 500, I think we only have about 25 that
Hmm.
offer that as an option. But what I love about planning a wedding right now is that there are so many choices. So if you want something Mediterranean and Tuscan inspired, there's these 10 venues that have that. If you want a barn but you want it to be industrial and look like a warehouse, it exists. Like so it's really hard to pick a favorite because it's not it's I like different venues for different reasons. There's one that has like the most amazing gardens and things that you've ever, I mean, I don't know who takes care of the property there, but it's everything is always flowering all the time. It's stunning, but it's also all outside, so it can be warm. Like so I
Yeah.
think that it's just finding what I love about the quantity, and this is in every market in Florida, is that if you dig around, you really can find the ideal venue. Might not be ideal for your budget of what you're trying to spend, but there's really so many freaking choices that
Hmm.
exist out there for you to find something that'll work for you.
Right. Yeah. Because I know now it's becoming so almost like individualized to each couple, which I love. Like
Yeah.
I would love to, talk, because a lot of my friends, I feel like when the barn wedding was just like starting out, everyone was having a barn wedding. And
Yep.
I mean, if that's your thing, like that's awesome. But I know people who are like, I don't really want a barn wedding, or like this is kind of like all we have right now. And
Right.
so I think it's really awesome to see people doing it like at the aquarium, like the Tampa Aquarium, or
Yeah.
like even, something a little bit more niche, like at the plant store. We have a few like
Yep.
bigger plant stores here in Tampa. So, whatever fits your vibe, I think that's like so awesome to see. And I love that you guys have such a variety as well. And
Yeah, I mean, I
with
think you
all of the
just
filters,
if you have something that like is personal to you, or maybe like you went to a local restaurant on your first date and it's your favorite food and whatever, while there are a ton of venues out there that might have the expertise of how to execute, from all of those, don't hesitate to ask the brewery, the, local restaurant. I mean, they might be willing to do a buyout. Like you can buy, they're probably not going to do it on a Saturday night, but they might do it on a Sunday or
right.
on a weekday. So
Hmm.
It's okay to think outside the box. I will say that most of the time when it's an established as a venue, it tends to come with a few more of the things you might need. I have a
Yeah,
lot of people who I'll meet them at a wedding show and say, "Oh, we're getting married in our backyard." I'm like, just so you know, it tends to cost almost triple the cost of a venue to get married at home. And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah." And it's just things people don't always think about. Like if they're on septic or city water, then they have to rent toilets. If they're on septic, like there's just so many factors.
right.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's a cool time we live in that the rules are kind of out the window.
Yeah, definitely. On that, do you have any like super eccentric venues that you could think of that somebody might not that might not come to mind for somebody who's looking for something out of the ordinary?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking for something that has big open space, right? If even if they don't have the tables and chairs. So I talked to this couple and we were like brainstorming ideas and we thought of like a roller rink, of doing something like that where it's a small, they've got that big open wood floor and normally it's
Right,
roller
right.
skates on it, but if that's your vibe and that's your feel, I think too that sometimes people forget that a lot of the cities have city owned venues that tend to be more affordable. So,
Right.
but they're really bad at marketing and they don't have a lot of money to spend. So you're not going to find them on national directories. They're really bad on Instagram. So,
Yeah.
I usually will suggest, pick the city near you, pick St. Pete or Winter Park and type in like Winter Park city owned venue.
Mm,
And you'd
okay.
be amazed sometimes what comes up. And most of them tend to be a little bit less expensive because the city is not there. It's not privately owned. So it's not that they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to not be profitable, but it's more of something built into the city budget rather than privately owned.
That's that's really smart. I have not thought of that.
Yeah, because sometimes the cities will have garden clubs or community centers or
Hmm.
things like that you might walk in and be like, oh my God. But if the venue's only $800 versus this venue over there that's 7,000, you
Oh
now
yeah.
have 6 grand to make it look good. So,
Right.
you can kind of bring in some of those pieces, maybe some drape or lighting or things to enhance it and get more of designing what you want rather
Hmm.
than having to go with the overall look. It's just a game of time, money, like, and who's going to do all the work.
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah, it's incredibly difficult to have to be in that situation where you have to decide like what is your big hitters are going to be when it comes
Hmm.
to what you're spending because everybody's wedding budget is different, but
Yeah.
there are a few things that you want to splurge on, and I would say that if you plan ahead and you find a venue that maybe does some more of the
Hmm.
additional services for you, like tables, chairs, even in-house catering. Sometimes they even have a DJ. Like that could be so helpful. And even if you do end up spending a little bit more, you might actually be saving yourself time and the headache of having to hire each one of those by yourself. So,
Yeah. And when you look at, what you were saying of the looking where you're going to splurge in your budget. I used to tell every couple who got married at our venue the same advice that at the end of your wedding, people only remember three things. They remember the food and beverage because people remember food. If the food was great, the food was great, and they'll talk about it and they'll love it and all of those things. If the food was bad, they talk about the food was bad. The DJ and entertainment kind of makes and breaks the whole party. And the only thing you have after the fact is the photos. That's it.
right.
So, like, you can go crazy on an insane over the top invitation, but no one's going to remember that. It's not the feeling that they get from your wedding. So, yes, you want to do the things and distribute evenly, but at the end of the day, there's only so much that's going to leave that lasting impression.
Exactly. Yeah, I definitely, as a wedding photographer, I could definitely agree.
Yeah.
I think photos are super important, and I always try to capture like the feel. I don't want to say the vibe because I feel like that's so like Gen Z of me to say.
I'll
Um,
take it. I'll take it. As an elder millennial, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't
yeah,
bother me.
I mean, I think I'm like a zillennial because
Yeah.
I was born in 92, so I think like that's what I am. But then
Yeah.
then again, like some of my friends and coworkers are like They say
They're like,
some
no,
things
you're
and I'm
not.
like, what are you saying? I have no
They're
idea
like,
what that
what are you
means.
talking
I'm
about?
so old. I mean, I'm like, I used to watch The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air at night on Nick at Night. So
All right,
that's,
Munchkin. All
I
right.
know. That's a millennial,
Yeah.
that's a millennial uh name tag if I've ever seen one. But yeah, speaking about those additional services that venues can provide, what are some services that somebody might not think of?
Yeah, I do think that if you're on a budget and you're really trying to save money wherever you can, maybe choosing a venue that allows outside catering and gives you choices might help to stretch the budget a little bit further. But catering's a lot of work to kind of have all the conversations and meet through them all and choose them all. So I think that like when you look at the venues that offer more than just kind of tables and chairs, there's a decent amount of venues that also offer some form of coordination service.
Mm,
And whether that's an internal, like staff member, an employee that's doing that day of coordinating for you, and it's included in the package, or it's included and then they outsource it, which has definitely been something that some venues do, but that's something to kind of ask more about when you're touring venues and saying like what's the level of planning and service that I can expect to receive from the venue, because
hmm.
sometimes they're like we just set up the tables and chairs and the rest is up to you, and
Right. Yeah.
others really help guide that process a little bit more. So I think that that might be a service that's easy to look at. And then the other would be that it's an easy one to forget is linens. Some venues include them. Other times they
Yeah.
can come from the catering company, which is okay too. But I think it could be an additional cost that adds up really quick. If you have a high guest count, it can get pretty expensive.
Yeah, definitely. Like you don't even think about that, sometimes because
No,
like most of your life you're not going around being like, oh, I need to rent linens for my event,
no. And like
like
the napkins can be $2 to $3 per napkin.
right.
Right. So it's
Yeah.
$2 a napkin times your 100 guests is $200 plus delivery fees. And that's
Yeah.
not linen on the table. That's just the
That's
napkin.
just
So,
napkins. Yeah. I
so
actually helped plan a baby shower recently and I was like, do we need to get linens? I was like, the baby's not even born yet.
yeah, it's like, does anybody really? Plastic will be just
I know.
fine.
I'm
It'll
like,
be
can we
just
just
fine.
use some like bamboo napkins that are like
Yeah.
recycled or you know
Yep.
I'm like super big into sustainability and
Yeah.
my whole life I've been like really earth conscious and stuff. So are there any weddings that you've seen um that have either found a venue that suits that or
Yeah. I mean, we have a venue in Central Florida that's owned by a catering company, and they work with O Town Compost, and they compost all the food and any like food waste, and kind of really do a good job separating food waste from like paper and glass waste.
Mhm.
That's one that I know of. So, but I do think, in general, it can be really challenging because the event industry, it's like one day. And
Yeah,
so there's so much of it.
definitely.
But I do think you can look at, the cost of renting things versus buying things. A lot of times we'll find that people will say from the florist, well, I'll just buy all the candles myself, but every one of those candles is individually wrapped in plastic and individually, and sometimes the things like favors, when you buy the cheapy ones online, they are one by one wrapped in plastic. And
Yeah,
so I think you can look at some of those opportunities that are, do I really need that? Or can we do it in a way that isn't, trinkets and trash that people are going to just throw away?
right. And like glitter, that kind of stuff is
Oh my
always like
God.
I'm
Glitter's the
s-
worst.
I know. But I've been seeing a trend where people do like confetti made out
Hmm.
of leaves, which I think is really cute.
Yeah.
Or some people will do I've gotten I shot a wedding where the couple has birds, like pet birds, and they gave
Yep.
us for the wedding favors, it was like these little hearts made out of bird seed that you could put on the
Cute.
tree outside. And I was like, that's perfect. That'll go like compost naturally. The string was made out
Yep.
of hemp, so it was like perfect, naturally composting. And I was like, that's awesome, because you get to feed the birds and you get to see it. I'm not sure how they all came wrapped. Like I can't speak on
Yeah,
that because I wasn't
right.
there.
Yeah, but it's better than it being, favors was one of those things that I used to tell couples like 80, almost 80%. If it's not food, 80% of them get left behind. And so as
Oh
somebody who
yeah.
used to clean up at the end of the wedding, I was like, we literally have piles of them. And
Hmm.
so
And as a vendor, you usually take one home.
right. And I'm like, because it's, or like sometimes they would be like one glass that's etched with the couple's name on. I'm like,
Right.
nobody wants that. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know you think it's great, but nobody wants your wedding day and your names. They don't want
Yeah,
it on
I've gotten one too that, but it was a sticker, so I just took the sticker off. I'm sorry
That's
if you're
not bad.
listening to this.
Yeah.
Please forgive me.
Right. But that's not bad because at least then you kept it and used it. So
Right, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think sustainability is a big thing. It's just in general, the event industry is not the best about it, especially in the South. They get a little bit better about it like out in California and out in the West. But I do think if that's something that's important to you, it's important to ask the questions like, do you recycle and do you whatever? And they may say, well, we do recycle, but we don't recycle at events because of this. And let me walk you through it. Because
Hmm.
sometimes it's like the logistical challenge for us to do that. We would need
Right,
4 times the amount of trash cans, which is 3 times the amount of service staff. And then you're paying for that. And you're like, I
right.
might be okay with that one night not recycling. Like
Hmm.
when you look at the
Yeah.
total.
Or you could look into like even places where, you can potentially bring in larger alcohol containers or
Yeah.
out larger, drink containers because like now like I've from what I've seen, a lot of the events are one serve, like one bottle of beer.
Mm-hmm.
One can, one
Yep.
mini Diet Coke bottle when you could just like buy bigger ones and
Mm-hmm.
potentially save on plastic. But yeah, I definitely
Right, but
think
then
that
here's the response, right? So as the hotel person, I'm like, for me to do that, I can do that, but I'm gonna need twice as many bartenders because
right.
popping a bottle of beer is very fast service over the bar, or opening a can is really quick. If we're gonna do something like that, that's different, then we're gonna need more staff. And so
Yeah.
if it's that important to you, 100% get the extra staff,
Hmm.
but ask the questions when you're touring the venue of those things, like you said, that are just super important to you. You want to have that conversation with your fiance about it in advance of starting
Hmm.
that planning process.
Right. That's so true. I feel like something that might not get brought up a lot though is, you know, if you are a same-sex couple or LGBTQ couple, is it more difficult to maybe speak to vendors? Like, is there, I mean, I'm in a heterosexual couple right now, but I feel like
Yeah.
it could be very scary, especially in the South, to kind of approach vendors. And do you have any advice for people who might be like dealing with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is that your noggin, right? Like if you're all over their website and there's like a Corinthians quote on the website, there's a good chance that they're very
Yeah.
Christian, and and it's a privately owned barn out in the country. Like while some of them might be totally fine, I think it's like look for the signs. Also utilize things like their Instagram account, their TikTok account, and their website, and look at what photos are being featured. If at
Hmm.
no point do you see a same-sex couple anywhere throughout, there is the very strong chance that that is not a market that they're targeting. It doesn't mean that
Hmm.
they're like absolutely not,
Right.
but what I would probably do is then like look for maybe a photographer or someone else or a planner that clearly does do same-sex weddings or be more open to the whole LGBTQIA like community, and
Hmm.
ask them, hey, listen, like we will be hiring a planner down the line, but we're considering these 3 venues, and I really don't want to reach out and have to like deal with finding out. But so look for it online, but also like be open and like, because if you put it in, it's terrible, but let's just be honest, right? Most of them don't want the bad reputation, even if they're not preferring to do same-sex weddings. So
Hmm.
if you're really clear in the form you submit that like me and my fiance are looking forward to planning our same-sex wedding, they will write you back and tell you the date's not available. They're not
Okay.
going to write you back and say, I mean, unless they're very religious human beings, they're not going to write back and say, we don't do same sex weddings. So
Right.
that you're going to like get to a spot where it's uncomfortable if the form only has one name on it, or, you haven't
Right.
made it clear in the details. And then,
Hmm.
because it used to happen at the hotel all the time, two girls would show up and I'd be like, are they together? Are they friends? Is it her sister? Like, because like you don't know. And you also don't
Yeah.
want to ask, like, hey, is this your fiance? And they're like, no, it's my sister. I'm like, sorry, like, I
Right.
don't know.
Right.
So I think that like as an industry, we're getting better about asking better questions on the front side, but
Hmm.
be open and just be really clear in your reach outs to say. You don't have to be like, do you do same-sex weddings? I mean, that's fine if you're ballsy enough to ask it, but I
Hmm.
think it's okay to just say, me and my fiance are planning a same-sex wedding and blah
Hmm.
blah blah, and they'll just quietly weed themselves out.
Right. Yeah, I feel like that can be, that's an easy out for them as well without
Yeah.
having to say like, oh, we don't do it. So
Yep.
unfortunately, we're still trying to progress for as an industry, and I've
Yeah.
recently updated my one of my forms to be more gender inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of bride and groom, I changed it to like marriers,
Yep.
which is so hard to say out
I
loud,
know.
but like when you're writing it down, it's fine. Marriers. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but I think you can
definitely.
you can look for people who on their about page have their pronouns on there. If
Hmm.
it says like, oh, on your about page on your website, if it's like Nina, she, her, it's clear that they're open to, or if it's in their email signature, as wedding
Hmm.
professionals, without having to put a rainbow front and center everywhere, we can do a better job of making it
Right,
clear with subtle that we're open.
definitely. Yeah. And I think that's, something that can definitely be improved on, but I have seen already an improvement in the industry, at least
Absolutely.
since I've started working in the industry. But yeah, and I think it's one of those things that not everybody thinks about when you first start out, because you might not get a same-sex marriage in your first, you know, 2, 3, 4 years of being in the
Yeah.
industry. So
But
yeah,
I think there's
definitely.
always that opportunity to maybe grab a couple that's already married and say, hey, you want to put on your wedding attire again? And let's go out and do a shoot for free, so that
Right.
you've got the content to be able to show that you're open to it.
Mm-hmm.
Or writing a blog post on your website that's like tips for planning your same sex wedding with photography. Like, I think there's ways that we can do a better job. I agree it's improved. There's definitely still room for growth, always. Um, but you're right. Like, I think it's putting in the effort to say, like, the venue I was at before it was even legal to get married, because I've been doing weddings a long time. We hosted a photo shoot and I was like, look, the Supreme Court, this is coming. So we need to have the content we're going to need from a marketing standpoint. Like,
Yeah,
otherwise I'm going to
definitely.
be behind the curve instead of ahead of the curve. So I do think as a couple, you can really just look for, who's already posting about it and showing it. And the same thing applies for people who are biracial or whatever. It's just looking to see who's clearly inclusive in everything they're showing. Real
Yeah.
people of all shapes and sizes. And we
Mm-hmm.
have a hair and makeup artist. I called her and was like, hey, have you ever looked at your Instagram and realized every female on there is blonde, blue eyes, white as can be, and
And
is like
skinny
and a
mini.
size 4? And she
Yeah.
said, oh my, she goes, she's like, now that you say it, a lot of our clients look like that. I'm like, that's because that's all you show.
Right.
You
Yeah.
can't tell me you don't get one girl with brown hair
Yeah.
and do their wedding. Like, there's no way they're all blonde with as many
Right.
events you do. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think as professionals, we can do a better job of showcasing it. And
definitely.
the venues tend to do a better job of being open and staying ahead of it.
Hmm. Yeah, as a photographer, I've tried to showcase people, like real people that are real
Yeah,
people, and not that like somebody who's skinny, blonde, and white isn't a real person. It's
right.
just that's some photography or even wedding pages, like that's all you see.
Yep.
So I've tried to feature, people of color, older
Yep.
people who are
Yeah.
not super thin. Like
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure like in the past year, I've had like 4 brides over the age of 50, which like that's not like old. I'm just saying that's like a
No. Yeah, it's above the
older
average
than
though. Yeah.
typical. So I definitely want people to know that like, and I think part of why I do photography, um, and why I love photography of humans is to show them how beautiful they are because, this day you're supposed to feel at your best. And like
Yeah.
if you hire a photographer and you feel gorgeous and beautiful and like you go onto their Instagram or their website and they haven't posted you, it's like kind of a, I don't know, kind of a kick to the butt where you're like, maybe I didn't look as good as I thought. So I try to
Yeah.
showcase like everybody just so that, everybody feels included. And, I want to make sure that what I'm showcasing is real and that people
Yeah.
feel like they, you know, I'm proud of my work and I'm proud of, I just, because I fall in love with every couple I shoot
Yeah.
anyway.
But you
Like
have to remember, like, think about the venue I was at. We did 150 weddings a year. So, like, it was
oh
so
yeah,
challenging from a
right.
content standpoint. I loved my crazy country hunting couple that did camouflage and neon orange as their linen colors. But,
Oh
like,
wow.
that was not our brand. And so, as much as I enjoyed them, I was like, ooh, that ain't going on my Instagram. Like, love you
Right.
guys.
Yeah.
But so
I
yeah,
think,
I mean, I think it's just making sure that you think about like what's the quantity of, what they're doing and how they're doing it and showcasing at least a wide range.
yeah, definitely. Sorry, my cat is attacking me.
No problem.
Um, yeah, I think like I'm still a pretty small business, so I have a
Yeah.
full-time job. I don't get and it's as I haven't gotten myself to the tax bracket where I can just shoot weddings only and
Yeah.
that's my main source of income. So I definitely have the ability to really showcase almost everybody I shoot, but I definitely can understand like if you're having, 200 weddings or something crazy like that, maybe not 200, but
Yeah.
over even 50 weddings a year, that can be really difficult, especially when you're, in charge of marketing and advertising and
Doing
doing
all
all
of
the
it.
social media. It can
Yeah.
be super daunting. I can totally understand, like, especially when every week, Instagram decides what they want,
My God. Every week the
they want to
rules
promote.
change.
It's
Yep.
like, well, we're doing reels now we're doing carousels, now we're doing posts. And
Yep.
it's like, I want to just take pictures. I don't want to be, I don't want to have to learn like the algorithm.
Yeah. And I think it's hard too for couples planning because there's so many places, right? Besides Pinterest and TikTok and Instagram, and then you have national directories and local directories, and then Googling things and Google image searching. There's just so much info out there. I think it's about, the couple really starting their planning process from a place of them sitting down, talking, envisioning their wedding together. One's
Mhm.
always going to be the primary. I don't care whether it's man, woman, 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 man, man, one tends to be a primary. But I think that when you can get on the same page with what's the most important to you, really looking at the guest list, having a serious money conversation as to like how much do we want to invest in this, because weddings are an investment of your personal or family or whoever's contributing. What does that look like? But when you can have those great conversations at the very early stages, the
Mhm.
rest of the planning process, you already know that cake's not our priority. We don't really care about it. So let's look for something that's a more budget friendly option there and really use that as criteria, to narrow down and
Definitely.
sort through.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. And having to find vendors that provide value, I think
Mm-hmm.
is very important.
Yeah.
So I think your website is a great example of that because it is a directory. It is one of the many directories out there, but
Yeah.
as from what we've talked about today, I feel like you already provide so much value to people who might not know where to start.
Yeah, I mean, the
Um,
process is just difficult. And so what if we can help narrow that down by, really getting you to think differently and go at it differently and from a place of, we're really particular about couples are always like, can you just tell me how much the venue costs? I'm like, I can't, because they change all the time. But even with the $1, $2, and $3 signs, no matter what the venue chooses themselves at, as soon as we get their pricing, we'll rearrange them. I'll be like, no, you are not inexpensive. You are in the average. Like, we're moving you to the middle,
Yeah.
or some venues that they think they're average. And I'm like, if that's your price point, you are low. And we'll kind of rearrange. So it really just helps control the narrative a little bit better to make sure that it's a quality resource. It's
Hmm.
not just because we're in the local market. I tour the local spaces. So, I mean, I drove up to Ocala this week to go to the equestrian center because I've had like 4 or 5 couples on Instagram DM me and ask us questions about it. And I'm like, I have no idea. I haven't been there yet. So I went
Yeah,
up, toured the whole space, learned everything I could about the venue, understanding it and the price points and all of that. So I think it's always better. Like, I know you can hire people everywhere you go, but that local knowledge is something that, you can't live without when it comes to planning a wedding.
definitely. And because, it is a Florida wedding, even if somebody might be coming from out of state, I think
Yeah.
hiring somebody who lives here is kind of more well aware. If somebody's like, oh, our ceremony is at 12 o'clock,
Yeah.
we're
We're
like,
like,
that's when the sun is at the highest point of the day,
uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I
and
think that photography is really the only category when people say they're going to bring someone in, from their local market or someone they found or whatever. Photography is the only, as long as that photographer's taking the time to scout the space and kind of see, not just rolling with it on wedding day, even if it's the morning of and they come an hour extra early or whatever.
hmm.
But outside of that, using people that are local to that area who know and have those relationships can actually save you a ton of money. So if you go to the venue and you're like, I don't really, the decor isn't my highest priority,
Hmm.
but I really care about chairs. They might say, well, here's the least expensive option, on our floral list, but here's the better rental company that has higher quality and more choices and whatever. So
Yeah,
but if they're not in that mark, I mean, if somebody calls me now and is like, oh, do you know any planners in New Orleans? I'm like, I mean, my network's big. I'll post it on Facebook and we can pray and try to find one. But, it's not, you want to have people that are in that market, wherever it is
definitely.
across the state.
Right. That's so true. Uh, I think like being in this market and having worked with people in the past, I think there's definitely you do develop friendships. And even if your couple is looking for a specific florist or something and they maybe haven't been able to get a hold of them and them,
Yeah.
it might
Oh,
be
yeah.
great to just send them a text, be like, hey, my couple's been reaching out to you. Can you please,
Yep.
because some of us get really busy and our mailbox gets just super full. So we might miss something, even if it is,
Yeah.
so, but yeah, definitely
Yeah.
having those relationships.
I was at a dinner with a wedding planner the other night and it was like 9:50 and she said, hey, we have a podcast called The Wedding Sassholes, and it's more of a business podcast. It's not really for couples. I mean, you're welcome to listen to it, but it's really about how to grow your wedding business. But my co-host is a cake baker, and she said, hey, do you think if I called Vanessa, like the wedding's this Saturday, but do you think if I called her that she would answer? And I'm like, well, she's not going to answer your call at 9:45 at night, but she'll answer mine. And I was like,
Yeah.
so I called her and was like, please don't kill me. This wedding planner has a question. Here you go. I love you. And I like passed the phone over and she was like, I hate you right now, but it's fine. And, because
Yeah.
it's a planner who she works with all the time, but she doesn't answer the business line after a certain point and doesn't really give out
Hmm.
her personal number. So
Right.
they wouldn't know how to get, but so yeah, those are those relationships that, and when we work together on event days constantly, we just flow better all together.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's been times where I've worked with, especially as a photographer, when you work with a videographer that and
Yeah.
you don't get into each other's way, you make room for each other. I mean,
Yep.
everybody's super respectful anyway. Like I haven't come across anyone who's been,
Oh,
you
I've seen it. It ain't pretty when they don't play well together. It's not pretty.
yeah, I've heard some horror stories, but luckily I'm pretty like go with the flow type of person. So I'm like, if you want to go ahead, like I'll just whatever. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna get my shot. So
Yep. Yeah, I'm gonna
but
get. I'll throw the elbows if I have
yeah,
to. Yeah.
yeah, I mean I like to, some people are like, oh, I don't like to post my couples. I'm like, I do. Like,
Yeah.
even if it is like a walking post, that's both.
Yeah.
Um, but definitely I feel like it's those relationships where you have those people who are your friends with and you've worked in the past together. Like when you see each other on that day, you're having fun, the couple's having fun, at the end of the day, it's a great time
Yeah.
for everybody. So, but yeah, I guess I think I have one more question.
Sure.
Yeah, any news for upcoming projects or events that you want to let the people know about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like we're always looking to improve the resources and learn more about what kinds of things that we can create. So we're definitely working on some more like digital downloads and kind of timeline planners and things like that. That'll be coming soon. But yeah, most of the events we host are more networking events for the businesses to connect with each other. But we do participate in all the other, wedding shows and things around Central Florida. We go to a few down in Tampa. And so keep an eye out on the website for any of the upcoming shows. You can join our email list if you want to get notified about them. Most of the time, we're just Central Florida based, but every now and then we get things from other markets. But yeah, I mean, that's most of what we're working on and doing is just figuring out different ways to grow, how to bring better content that's helpful information to couples planning their wedding and to make it easier for them and just a more seamless process.
Awesome. That sounds so good. And as far as for vendors, I know you said that you host events for people who
Yeah.
are in the wedding industry. I, as a wedding photographer, would love to hear more about that. And people who are listening might also like to know more about that. So when is your next big event for that?
Yeah, so once a year we throw a huge party, and that one's actually on June 7th. So if the episode will be out before then, that's we throw a really big summer industry party. We have 300 to 350 local pros. It's a really freaking good time. I would say it's networking, but we're event people, so we party. We party just as hard as we network. We network with a lot of food, a lot of bar, and a lot of fun
Nice.
tied in
Yeah.
tied in with it. But we do an event every single month. And so sometimes it's coffee connects in the morning. This month we did a happy hour on Tuesday night. In August, we're doing like inspiration boards, like reset your goals for the year, just different ways to not only build relationships, but in a more fun, I don't know, not your traditional networking. And we did speed networking in
Mhm.
April. So if you are a wedding pro listening to this and you head over to our website, or you're a venue or you're a vendor and you just want to learn more about what we're doing here in Central Florida, or you want to market to couples here, if you head over to our website and go all the way up to the top, there's a little section that says for wedding pros. And there's a little drop down there and it has all different information there for you of all of our events, and we do education and webinars and things like that. So yeah, we're just kind of here to really believe in the community that is the wedding and event industry, and build it and help it grow.
I love that. I'm so excited. I want to go to this big
I
networking
mean, it's worth
air
the
quotes
hotel room.
party.
Just drive up. It's worth the hotel room. We have a few of the in Tampa, there's Marry Me Tampa Bay, and in Sarasota there's a group called Swell, and a bunch of the members from Sarasota come up. They came the first year and they were like, "Oh, we're coming every year." And so
Yeah,
yeah, this year it's college themed, so everything is back to school. And so
awesome.
it's at an old schoolhouse from the early 1900s. So
I
so we
mean, I
decided
gotta
for
I gotta
college.
whip out my jorts.
Yes. No, literally, if people are like, what do I wear? I'm like, you wear what you wore to college. Like, you can make it
Yeah,
as fun or whatever. You do whatever you want to do with
that sounds really fun. I gotta put that on my calendar.
it.
Hopefully, I don't have a wedding that weekend.
It's a Wednesday. You'll be fine.
Oh,
I'm like, it's
okay.
a weekday. Take the day
You
off
guys
work. You'll be
already planned
fine.
for it.
Yeah. I'm like, take the day off work. You'll be fine.
Awesome, Shannon. Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna list your website, your
Perfect.
Facebook, Instagram, everything in the show notes.
Yeah.
But if you just want to go ahead and tell people where to find you or how to get into contact with you, just
Yeah.
for people who
Everything
are
is just,
lazy.
yeah, it's fine. Same here. We do the same on our podcast, but everything is just at wedding venue map, MAP. So whether it's the website, it's weddingvenuemap.com, our email, phone numbers, all that contact is on the site, but our Instagram, Facebook, everything's the same. If you type in the wedding venue map, we're really the only one that'll come up. So you're good to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And
You're
I hope you
welcome.
guys enjoyed our newest episode. I had a lot of fun. Uh,
Me too.
luckily, yeah. When two podcasters get together, we just
Yeah.
talk and talk. But yeah, thank you so much.
Of course, of course. And if you ever need any help with anything, don't hesitate to reach out. Let me know. And then once it goes live, send me the link and I'll share it all over our social. Kate will put it in our e-blast. So we'll kind of share it around.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll let you go.
Yeah. All right. Have a great night. I'll talk to you
Yeah,
soon.
I'll keep you posted on everything.
Yeah.
But
I'll send that stuff over tomorrow. I threw it on my list.
all right, thank you so much.
Okay. Have a good day.
Good night. Bye bye.
Bye.